10% of Iran's population are living in exile. The Iranian American community are one of the most successful immigrant groups. And a lot of Iranians now have family living abroad. They realize life abroad is not as terrible as the government portrays it. This death to America and death to Israel has got them nowhere.
Welcome to Jew and Stew, the podcast of the Chicago Jewish Alliance, where we feature advocates on the front lines of Jewish leadership, resilience, moral clarity, along with the allies who stand with us. This space is for real conversations with people who are doing the work, shaping the culture, and refusing to be passive in moments that demand courage. Today, we're joined by Jacqueline Saper, award-winning author From Miniskirts to Hijab, a girl born in revolutionary Iran. Born in Tehran to an Iranian father and a British Jewish mother, Jacqueline lived through the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, and the collapse of Jewish life under the Islamic Republic before rebuilding her life here in the United States. Her memoir is now taught at universities across the country, and her work has appeared in major publications including the Seattle Times and the Times of Israel. She brings a rare perspective as someone who has experienced authoritarianism firsthand and understands what freedom actually costs. In this conversation about identity, exile, courage, and what happens when ideology replaces liberty. Let's get into it. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us today on Jew and Stew. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So usually we do a before and after, and our before life and afterlife is about October 7th. Mm-hmm. However, we're going to do a little bit of a different before and after today. Tell everybody when and where you were born, please.
I was born in Tehran in the 60s. Tehran is the capital of Iran. My mother was a big fan of Jacqueline Kennedy, who was a first lady at the time. So that's why I was named Jacqueline.
Wonderful. And what was life like around the time you were born?
I was born during the 60s and 70s when the country was rapidly modernizing. It was the golden era of Iran. Life was I felt like just like an American teenager. I loved watching the Brady Bunch. I followed Farrah Fawcett's hairstyle. I watched American movies, just a typical teenager. The only issue was I was growing up in Iran. Iran was rapidly modernizing. We had a Miss Teen Iran every year. My second cousin won the best dressed. She was in the finalists. She won the best dressed girl in Iran.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a very good childhood.
And your mother was Jewish?
My mother is Jewish, and I'm not a typical Iranian girl because my mother is English Ashkenazi and my father is Iranian, Mizrahi.
How did your mom end up in Iran?
My father was one of the first students in 1946 that was sent to England to get his education at the University of Birmingham. And he and my mom met at the university dance.
Oh, so she chose to move to Iran.
She chose to move to Iran.
Wow.
For 2 years, they corresponded. I have some of their love letters. And then in 1951, she got on a plane and went to Iran.
And stayed.
And stayed.
And what did she think of it there?
Well, my mom, what did she think of it? Iran was becoming more modern. Gradually, it was the time that the king married his second wife, Queen Soraya, who was very admired. And she was also, in Persian, we call them dorage, of two different heritages. Queen Soraya had an Iranian father and a German mother. And my mom always worked for the airlines. So our family got deeply discounted tickets. And every summer when I was growing up, I spent my summers in England.
Oh, okay.
With my maternal family. So I talk about myself in the book. During my parents' generation, country marriages, cross-cultural marriages, it wasn't intramarriage between a Sephardi and an Ashkenazi. It really didn't happen. The Jewish community was very inclusive, and at that time, most marriages were arranged, both in Jewish and Muslim communities. So I call myself a minority within a minority when I was growing up.
Because your parents got married out of love and not
Out of
arranged.
love, the marriage lasted 63 and a half years.
Oh, my goodness,
Yes.
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
What was the makeup of the country like? You were a minority within a minority. How many Jewish people did you know growing up? What were, tell me a little bit more about what it was like. What was it like in school? What were your friends like? What was childhood like?
It is estimated the Jewish community was around 100,000. Majority lived
In Tehran or
no,
in the whole country?
The majority lived in Tehran, and another minority lived in the city of Shiraz in the south of the country. And then there were different parts of the country. At that time, not only Jews, but other religious minorities, the Christians, Baha'is, Zoroastrians, we all lived along with Muslims. Really, nobody cared what your religion was. It was an egalitarian society. I attended a Jewish day school, which had around 2,000 students. However, 15 to 20% of the student body was not Jewish because of the excellent curriculum of our school. And we all were friends. Nobody even cared what religion you were. And the Jewish community was very visible, majority upper middle class, some very wealthy. And we had pop singers. We had, again, religion wasn't an issue. And when I went to school, I would sometimes I walked to school. There was an avenue called Kach Shomali Avenue. I passed the Israel Diplomatic Center. Then I passed an Israeli day school until I got to my school. And there were direct flights from, El Al flights from Tehran to Tel Aviv. Every summer on our way from England, we would stop in Israel to visit my father's family. And many Iranians would go to Israel for medical treatment. There were a large community of Americans, some Europeans and Israelis living in Tehran. There were certain clubs. There was a bowling club. All Americans would go there. Because my mom was English, we knew a lot of foreigners. There were also a lot of women like my mother married to Iranians. So, and I remember on television, we watched all American series and TVs, but we had an FM radio, and we would mute the TV because all the programs were translated, dubbed in Farsi, Persian language, and my mom would tune into that special FM station wavelength, and we could watch the actual program in English.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it was really a good time.
I don't know if you saw the reaction on my face when you said you walked by an Israeli school, because
yes,
that would be unheard of today.
Oh, absolutely unheard of.
So
yes.
For me, I'm born I'm born after the Ayatollah came in. So that's all I know and all I think of.
Yes, no, people have to remember, before the revolution, Iran and Israel had an amicable relation. Actually, I can give you an example. In 1962, I'm giving away my age, I was an infant, and my mom always tells us this story. It became part of our family mythology. My mom was changing me or dressing me, and suddenly the earth shook in Tehran, and she grabbed me and went outside. The ground was shaking. There was a 7.1 magnitude earthquake in the city of Boin Zahra in the province of Qazvin, which is 80 miles from Tehran. And villages were razed all the way down. About 12,000 people were killed. And the country, they didn't have enough resources to rebuild everything. And during that time, the king's regime, the king Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was known as the Shah. Mm-hmm. Shah means king. They did not ask America or Europe for help. They asked Israel. And Israelis came to Iran. They brought engineers. Many planners came. They went to the villages, lived among the villagers, built the infrastructure, and gave back the people their dignity. So this is how the relationship was. A lot of Israelis were helping with Iran's infrastructure, just rebuilding many things.
That's amazing. And we have to think too, you said it was in 62?
Yes.
Israel was such a new country at
More
the
or
time
less, yes,
too.
but they were still helping.
And that they were going out and
Right.
and I'm assuming not just Iran and other countries in need in the Middle East at the time.
Yes.
So at the formation of Israel becoming a country, these were the relations that...
Absolutely. And ironically, after the revolution, there was a huge earthquake because it has a lot of earthquakes. It happens.
I didn't know that.
It's on a fault line. Earthquakes happen often. Some not that big, but there was a big earthquake in the north of the country. Thousands died. Israel offered to help, and this new regime refused, to the detriment of the people.
Obviously.
So
yeah.
the hate for Israel and America, behind all these geopolitics, you have to understand they're normal people there. And they have to deal with the consequences of all this hate and the regime's animosity towards the West.
Well, we're seeing a lot of it right now in the streets, and we'll get there. But,
Yes.
we're seeing the response of the normal people, of the civilians, and their calls to be freed of this regime now.
Right.
So, let's talk about your Judaism growing up. So you went to a Jewish day school. How connected were you to your Jewish identity? Did your mom, I don't know how observant, did you keep kosher? Did you light Shabbat candles? What was it like?
Well, in Iran at that time, in general, there were no classification of denominations, like conservative, reform. Everybody was Jewish. You just were Jewish. Synagogues were in the Orthodox fashion manner, but then many people drove to synagogue. There were parties. Women wore very nice décolleté outfits. Judaism was a big part of the Jewish community. Intermarriage was more or less unheard of. And although Muslims and Jews intermingled in business, in community, there was no issue there. And again, the Jews were protected and they were proud, and everything was available.
And there was no restrictions on holding certain offices or jobs or anything like that?
Not that I know. My father was a university professor, and we attended Yusufabad synagogue. We lived in a nice area which had a lot of Jewish population. It was called Yusufabad. Yusuf in Persian means Joseph. Abad means development. And it has and still has the largest synagogue in Iran, Yusufabad synagogue.
Still has?
Yes.
There's still a synagogue in Iran?
Absolutely.
Wow.
There are synagogues in Iran currently as well, because under this new regime, Christians and Jews are known as people of the book, and because they preceded Islam, they can practice their religion. However, that does not mean they're equal by law. And then there are and Zoroastrianism is another religion. They are a very small community. They can practice their religion. And each of these three religions does have a member in the parliament. I don't know how useful. There is just more a decorative position.
It's like tokenism almost.
Absolutely. But there is another religion called Baha'ism.
Mm-hmm.
And Baha'i religion was founded in Iran about 250 years ago, if I'm not wrong. And unfortunately, they are heavily, heavily discriminated by this new regime because they came after Islam. They have no rights.
We have a Baha'i temple here on the north side.
We have a Baha'i temple.
So we're talking the same
Chicago,
belief.
The same
yes,
beliefs, yes.
Yes. And I do know people who subscribe to the Baha'i religion, and they are really respectful of all the religions.
It's a very, I admire the religion in some aspects because they advocate equality for all, and equality especially for men and women, and education. That's their emphasis.
But this group that was following the Baha'i religion was not treated well when the Ayatollah came in.
After the Ayatollah, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I guess we're going to get to when the regime changed. You were about 17, 18?
Yes, I was a senior in high school. And suddenly my world turned upside down. The revolution did take about 8 to 10 months, but it was still very rapid how it started.
What was happening in the country to cause a revolution to occur?
That's a very good question. Although I'm painting an idyllic era, and I had a good life, there were a lot of freedoms, but there was rapid, as I mentioned, modernization. What the Shah, the king, was trying to do in one generation had to be done in 3 generations. And a lot of people who were deeply devout Muslims felt an assault to their traditions with all this modernity. And at that time, not today, but at that time, a lot of Iranians were illiterate and superstitious. Today, they're highly educated. But that time, that's what they were. And we had freedom in many, many aspects, but there was no political freedom. The Shah, the king, was somewhat an autocrat, and it was his rule or nothing else. Of course, he was not elected to be king. A king is born to be king, although he became a crown prince when he was 5 or 6 years old. But it's a hereditary position, and you're born into the royal family. And unlike, let's say, England, where it's a constitutional monarchy, Iran was, he didn't reign, he ruled. Mm-hmm. And then in the 70s, the Shah issued, there was the Rastakhi's political party. It means resurgence. And that's it. There was one political party. And anything you said against the royal family, against the Shah, was dangerous.
No freedom of speech.
No freedom of speech pertaining to government. And the Shah did have a secret police called Savak. They have exaggerated how brutal the Savak was. I don't know. I was never encountered by them. But there are stories of tortures. And so that was one big issue. And then the Shah's nemesis was an Ayatollah. Iranians are majority Shiite Muslims. Mm-hmm. The main Islamic world are Sunnis. So the Iranians as Shiites are a minority within the Islamic world. And they have the same holy book and the same prophet. But otherwise, Shiites and Sunnis are different in how they pray, some of their holidays. Shiites have imams, Sunnis have caliphs. And there are different ranks in the clergy. The highest rank is an Ayatollah.
Yes. I'm glad you gave that explanation, because I think people hear the word Ayatollah, but they don't know what it means. They think it's one person. Right. I believe there were 86 and now there's 88 Ayatollah in Iran.
You have to earn that position and rank. And there's a grand Ayatollah. That's the highest position. So there was an Ayatollah Khomeini, who always refused and rejected the Shah's modernization. In 1963, the Shah had something called a white revolution. It was very peaceful. And he took a lot of land from the landlords, gave it to the villagers, and he gave women a lot of rights. For example, the women woke up one day in 1963, and the king had given the women the right to vote. You may say, 1963, but you're talking about an Islamic country in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's huge.
Huge.
And women didn't even struggle for it. And I have to...
No marching in the streets like we did here in America.
And I have to tell you, in Switzerland, the women got the right to vote in 1973 or 72.
This is very progressive.
Later, very progressive.
Very progressive.
And not only the right to vote, family laws were... in the past, very patriarchal. Women got a lot of benefits, like, right to divorce, custody of children, a lot of issues like that. Women could become judges. Women went to universities, became doctors. Women became members of the parliament. I remember when I was growing up, my father used to tell me about Dr. Farrokhro Parsa. She was the Minister of Education, and she was a physician. He
Wow.
would tell me she should be your role model.
It's a good role model.
So all this angered Ayatollah Khomeini. He did not like all this modernization. He said it's an assault to the religion. And riots broke out in 1964. And many people were killed. He was against the Shah, the king, and the king exiled him. They exiled Khomeini to the next door neighboring country of Iraq. Because Iraq, Iraq is a country that has both Shia and Sunni Muslims, and a lot of Shiite holy sites are in Iraq. And he was exiled to Iraq. But Khomeini kept on, and everybody thought, oh, Khomeini is an old man, that's the end of him, and the Shah went on with modernization. But Khomeini kept on preaching and his fight against the Shah. And then he realized that he doesn't have much support by preaching against women's rights. Then he changed course, and later on, in 1978, Iraq expelled Khomeini.
I was going to ask, how was his relationship with the Iraqi government while he was exiled there?
He was expelled from there, and France gave him asylum in 1978. And from a village called Neaufle-le-Château outside Paris, he steered the revolution. And then the revolution started from there.
So I want to bring up your book because I think we'll get to the point. But your book is called From Miniskirts to Hijab.
Yes.
And this is your lived experience of what happened when the revolution took place. You said it was 8 months. So I was going to ask how quickly things changed.
Well, it actually started in August of 1978, and it ended on February 11th when Khomeini returned to Iran. So that's a long time.
Your ability to recall these dates
because
is amazing.
These dates are etched in my memory because I lived through them. The day Khomeini returned to Iran, February 1st, 1979, it was one of the scariest days in my life. I experienced him landing in...
You knew who he was.
Yes.
You knew who he was.
Because through the revolution, we knew who he was. And, during the revolution, Khomeini changed course. It was not about women's rights anymore. Actually, he told the women, women can dress whatever they want. It's not about women. He changed course against America and Israel. Mm-hmm. And America became the great Satan, and Israel was the dreaded Zionist regime. And both were deemed as oppressors of the world. In Persian, it's called mustakbirin. The Shah, America, and Israel were the oppressors, and Khomeini was the defender of the mustazafin, the oppressed. And this ideology gave him momentum, and a lot of opposition groups united under the flag of Khomeini's ideology. They were the leftists, the mujahideen, the anti-colonialists, the intellectuals, the students. Khomeini became a symbol and united everybody. And Khomeini was 76 years old. He looked like a kind grandfather, and he kept on reiterating that he was going to come back to Iran and go back to the seminary. There's a holy city of Qom in the south of Tehran. It's like the Vatican of the Shiite world. He said, I'm going to go back there, and Iran will be turned into a utopia. And everybody believed him. So, of course, when he returned, everything changed, and I can say that the religious clergy hijacked the revolution because people were hoping for more freedom and democracy. And what Khomeini did, not only he did not go to the seminary, he appointed himself as the supreme leader. And there were a lot of his writings were there, but there were a lot of ideology that he had not mentioned while in Paris. One was Islamic jurisprudence, known as Velayat Faqih in Persian Arabic, And that means that he would become the supreme leader. And the Shiites, Iranian Shiites believe in 12 imams. And the last imam, Imam Mehdi, went into isolation, went into hiding as a child. And they are waiting for his reappearance. And according to this ideology, the supreme leader is the representative of the 12th imam on earth. And he only answers to God. So, and Khomeini started purging out all the opposition. And that's how the theocracy was founded.
What was the relationship with Khomeini and the Soviet Union? And how was that, like, because there's this interesting marriage of Islamic extremist ideologies and Marxism. And you talked about how he really captured, this kind of more communist ideas.
Correct. I think it's that's what the concept I mentioned, the oppressed and the oppressors. And actually today, Russia is one of the biggest allies of Iran. Mm-hmm. And during the Russia-Ukraine war, Iran has provided the drones for Russia. And China also. They provide all the facial recognition and AI technology for Iran.
Mm-hmm. I'm from the Soviet Union, so okay. I lived under that. Well, I left as a young child, but my family lived under that oppression. And, I have found this marriage of these very unlikely friends.
Very unlikely,
and
yes.
Very opposing of each other in a lot of ways.
And ironically, they're friends.
They're friends, and to our detriment. We are the ones that suffer from this relationship.
As I mentioned again, behind all these news are normal people who have to bear the consequences.
Absolutely. Okay, so he's back. Mm-hmm. What happens to the Shah?
Well, during the riots, let me tell you, I was a senior in high school. The Shah, it got a momentum. Everybody was in the streets protesting, chanting, death to the king, death to Israel, death to America. And that death to Israel scared a lot of the Jews because we were somewhat conduit between Israeli Jews and Iranian Muslims. And they were chanting, "We want an Islamic Republic." Because they thought utopia would come. It will be wonderful. Now, I had a problem with that slogan. First of all, an Islamic Republic suddenly marginalized all religious minorities. That's one thing. And second, Iran, some people may not know, Iran and Persia are the same place. And Iran has a culture and tradition and history of 2,500 years. So when I went to high school, my history books were so thick because I had to learn dynasties and kings after kings. So imagine, 2,500 years, Persia or Iran has had kings. It's inherently a monarchist country, tradition. And when people are chanting, "We want an Islamic Republic," nobody really knew what that would entail because they've never had anything but kings. Mm-hmm. And so the revolution started, again, what I'm saying, in 1978 with a traumatic event. There was a movie theater in the south of Iran, in a city called Abadan, which is quite hot in the summertime. And people flocked into the movie theater, it was August, to watch a very popular movie. Because of air conditioning, it was a popular movie. And the doors were locked from the outside. And the cinema was set ablaze.
Oh, wow.
And about 470 people died.
Wow.
Burned to death.
Why did they do that?
That started the revolution. And they blamed it on the Shah. We do not think it was the Shah. And people got angry. And then a few weeks later, September 8th, there was another big protest in Tehran, Jaleh Square. And again, they exaggerated the numbers, that thousands of people were killed that day. People got angry. And then Khomeini, of course, those days there was no internet, but He recorded his sermons on cassette tapes, and there were leaflets spread everywhere. And he told people to protest, get in the streets. And everybody started protesting and chanting. And the whole country went on strike. That was the problem. There was shortages of food. There was literally no gas. Buses stopped working. Anybody who was associated with a prior regime or foreigners, anybody who was religious minorities, anybody who was scared was trying to escape Iran. There were not enough planes.
So that is you and your family.
Correct.
Associated with foreigners, a religious... your mom was a foreigner, right?
My mom was a foreigner, but in a way. Yeah.
Religious minority.
Yes.
You did not leave the country at the time, though.
No, I did not leave. A lot of issues. For example, my sister came knocking on our door. She was older than me. It was a Wednesday night. We had candles lit up because we didn't have electricity. And she said that they were very lucky to have secured some airplane seats. And the next Sunday morning, she and her husband and the toddler and his parents left the country.
Where did they go?
They went to Los Angeles at that time, but her husband didn't know English. They left everything behind, and they had to start from zero. I mean, when I say how people fled, families were torn apart. And when you left, majority of the people who left, their businesses were confiscated. A lot of homes were confiscated. And unlike foreigners, Iranians had to get visas, which was hard to get. They had to learn a new language, new culture. It was absolutely a chaotic time. And there was a curfew. My school was closed, of course. There was a curfew from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And if you went out, you could be shot. There were bullets. There were tanks in the streets. I'll give you a story. Our next door neighbor, her name was Mahrukh. Mahrukh is a very beautiful Persian name. Khanom means Mrs. Mahrukh Khanom one day came hysterically knocking on our front door because I couldn't buzz her in. We didn't have electricity. We brought her in. We calmed her down. And she said she was attending to her stew, cooking on the stove in her kitchen, and a bullet went straight from the window above her head, past her head. Fortunately, she was a short woman, but, this is how it was. And I smelled tires burning. It was a very scary time.
How long did this last for?
From August of 1978. And then the Shah... during the last months, he gave some speeches. He said, I will make reforms, I will change, but I think it was too little too late. Everybody thought once the king leaves, everything will be wonderful.
Of course, because that's how you just solve every problem.
Absolutely. Finally, on January 16, 1979, I saw on TV the king with Queen Farah, his third wife. She was very much loved.
What happened to the second wife?
Oh, that's a long story.
We like the second wife.
And
this guy was a ladies' man.
No, not necessarily. There's a long story why he married 3 wives, but they left. He had tears in his eyes. He took a bag of Iranian soil, and they left for good.
Where'd they go?
They were wandering from country to country. Nobody wanted them. Finally, Anwar Sadat of Egypt was a close friend. And the Shah actually is buried in Cairo, in Egypt. And he died a year later in July of 1980.
Oh, wow.
At the age of 60.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's sad. Yeah. That's sad that that's what happened to them. Okay. So the Ayatollah comes into power. Changes start. How quickly did you go from a miniskirt to hijab?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. Ayatollah Khomeini came back in February of 1979 and immediately executions started.
Executions of who?
Anyone who opposed him, and anyone who was associated with the prior regime, the monarchy.
Was there still family members of the Shah in the country, I'm assuming?
Not only family members, generals, a lot of generals, who had not been able to escape. The Prime Minister, Amir Abbas Hoveyda, he was executed. And these are revolutionary courts. They lasted 20 minutes, and the executions were done immediately.
No way to build trust in your new people by killing a whole bunch of people.
People were still, didn't know what's going on. Everything was happening so fast. They trusted this cleric, and they thought everything will be wonderful. They were still, and they thought, a revolution has happened. This is what happens during revolutions. And Farah Parsa, the Minister of Education I mentioned, she was also executed. And we would see...
The one that was your role model.
Correct. And we would see the pictures of their corpses on the front of the newspapers. And so this regime started on brutality. Mm-hmm. And then March 8 comes by. That is... And then when after Khomeini comes back, schools opened. And I went back to school. And my school was strategically a very prominent place in Tehran. It was on Shah Reza Street, center of Tehran. Later, after the revolution, changed into Revolutionary Street. And it was adjacent to the University of Tehran, which was the epicenter of the revolution. And then on March 8, International Women's Day, Khomeini gives a decree that all women and girls have to wear the hijab, but he started slowly. He
on
said
International Women's Day.
He said first women in employment. And imagine Iranian women and girls, so fashionable, so westernized. I used to literally wear miniskirts. Suddenly being told you have to wear hijab. And hijab wasn't just a headscarf. It was, Islamic hijab at that time in Iran was extremely strict. And women in the thousands came to the streets protesting. A lot of my classmates went, and they told me, it's in the book, Jacqueline, come with us, we're going to go protest. I inherently knew it was too late, and it was
too dangerous to go do that.
Too dangerous. I did not go. However, from our third floor classroom window, I saw the protests. I watched them. And this is the first protest after the revolution against the regime. And Iranian women, this is what I want to convey here. Iranian women have been at the forefront of opposition to this regime. And they are not quiet. They are extremely brave and courageous. Of course, my friends came back 2 hours later with horrified looks on their faces. They were, I don't want to say rumors, I believe them. They were attacked and they were insulted verbally, and to no avail. And then gradually, although the Khomeini had said first workplace, but gradually it became scary to walk in the streets without hijab. And hijab, hijab was to cover your whole body except the roundness of your face and your hands up to your wrist. No makeup that time. And then I was very scared walking in the streets. Even I used to put a ponytail on. I was still very scared. And then the regime instilled a unit of the police called the morality police. And morality police is, its sole duty and job is to prowl the streets and arrest women who are not properly wearing the hijab. And I have a chapter in the book titled Sister Guard Your Hijab. It's the day I was confronted by morality police. And it was one of the most scariest experiences I've had. See, a country that controls women eventually controls the whole society. That's why when in 2022, a young Iranian girl by the name of Mahsa Amini was arrested by the morality police because her hijab wasn't very well, according to them. She was beaten in the head and died a few days later.
I remember when this happened.
Yes.
It was all over the news here.
All over and that struck a nerve, the women life freedom movement, because it was a feminine woman's issue, which men did back up the women. But of course, that also was crushed, those protests.
So despite all this happening, and now you're being forced to wear a hijab, which, is not part of your religion or your culture in any way, were women allowed to hold jobs? Were they still allowed to have an education?
Absolutely. Ironically, after the revolution, before the revolution, as I mentioned before, many Iranians were religious. They would not send their daughters to university to sit among men. It's called namahram, men who are not religiously, they couldn't sit together. But after the revolution, this is what happened. After the revolution, the whole country closed down all higher education. See, when my biggest dream was to go to university.
Oh, and your father was a professor.
My father had to resign because he was in his early 50s. They were purging out a lot of religious minorities, Baha'is. My father was forced to resign. And all higher education was closed down for 3 years. And that was because they wanted to Islamitize all the curriculum. And when they reopened, it became very difficult to get an education for me because I had to, no matter what subject I wanted to study, I had to get a reference from the imam of a mosque and give a exam in Shiite theology, which I couldn't do. So I could not go to university in Iran. I had to do it once I came here. And
which you did multiple times.
I did later. But that was to my detriment. I couldn't. And then once the universities opened, families now sent their daughters to school, to university, because men and women sat separately. Women went in full hijab. The curriculum was Islamatized. So a lot of girls went to university. And today, actually, the university graduates in Iran are majority women. And
that's surprising to hear.
And that's why I think, unlike Afghanistan, that Taliban do not let women study, Iran is a very modern. People of Iran are very educated, highly educated, and they're not against America, majority, or Israel, I think. And a society that has educated women is dangerous to this regime.
I see a lot of current day social media influencers, Iranian women,
yes,
especially on social media, who talk about how they have no issue with Israel and these continued conflicts are not of their choosing and of nothing but detriment to them as people. But you got married.
Yeah, I got married. But to your comment, I have to add that Iran, unfortunately, has the highest brain drain in the world. About 10% of Iran's population are living in exile in America, Canada, and Europe.
That's a high amount.
That's because Iran today has over 90 million population, 92 million. And I can tell you, I don't want to generalize, but the Iranian American community are one of the most successful immigrant groups. They are highly educated. My own husband was a surgeon. And it's to the detriment of the Iranian society.
Absolutely.
And a lot of Iranians now have family living abroad. And there's social media, internet. They realize life abroad is not as terrible as the government portrays it. And this death to America and death to Israel has got them nowhere. And you asked about my marriage.
Yes. Yes, you got married despite all of this.
Despite all of this, very, very young age. During the revolution, while everybody was escaping, I met my future husband. And he was a student in the south of the country, a city called Shiraz. And he wanted to finish his education. He was in his residency of surgery in a very prestigious university. And at that time, before the revolution, the Pahlavi University and the University of Philadelphia had a reciprocity. And he wanted to finish and then come to America, or if the situation got better, he would have a very good future in Iran. Unfortunately, after the revolution, that reciprocity was severed and a lot happened.
You said you met him. How'd you meet him?
Just by chance. He was, as I said, he was in Shiraz, but he was on strike. Everything was on strike. He had nothing to do. He had a sister living in Tehran. And his mother said, why do we have nothing to do? Come to Tehran. And at a dinner party, we met. Something like that.
How do you attract a husband wearing a hijab?
No. This is during the revolution.
Oh, during. So you weren't all covered.
And then I have to tell you, since the revolution, Iranians have a chapter again called Public Life, Private Life. And even today, Iranians have learned to have two faces. You have a public persona to appease the regime. And then in the homes, you have your parties, you have your underground music, you have your illegal alcohol. So that's how Iranians have lived.
It's like prohibition.
Yes.
So you met your husband, you got married, you had a daughter.
I had a daughter.
Yes. And tell us about raising a daughter under...
Very difficult.
Very
Actually,
difficult.
I had two children. My daughter's the oldest one. Then I had a son 4 years later.
So still in Iran at the time.
Both born in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very concerned about my daughter because according to by law, girls from the age of 6, when they enter first grade, have to wear the hijab. So it wasn't just the cloth and she was wearing. Once she went to the first grade, I have a chapter called Welcome to First Grade. It was her indoctrination into radical Islamic propaganda. That scared me because, once you can't control your child's mind. For example, for 20 minutes, they had to stand in line chanting death to America, death to Israel. She had no clue where these places were. And this is the time.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
And this is the time when Iran was in a brutal war with Iraq. There was a war going on which lasted 8 years. And many, as it's estimated as many as possible, 1 million people died, with many more injured, because the Iraqi jets would come over the cities in Iran and just bomb civilians. And unfortunately, then, and even today, the government doesn't make shelters.
I was going to ask if you had bomb shelters like they do in Israel.
No. So we used to go sit in the basement. My shelter was praying and hoping it wouldn't be us. And my daughter, in recess time, they would dig a trench in the ground.
Oh, my goodness.
Just in case there was a red siren. There was a red siren. There was a channel on the radio that was silent all the time, and we had to keep it on. And then when a red siren came, very, very scary moment, there was a siren that saying an imminent bombing would be happening. Go and take shelter wherever you want to go. So I remember once, and I was in Shiraz, which was closer to the border. And once I remember the ground, and Shiraz at that time was a small city. The ground shook, and then the red siren went on. And this is the problem today because people don't have shelters. And I've heard that, I don't know what may happen with the current standstill between Iran and the U.S.
I'm going to preface because these podcasts get released, it's not going to be released tomorrow. So today is February 23rd of 26. And, we are currently in a standstill and deciding what action or non-action is about to happen with the U.S. and Iran. So I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I've heard, I don't know if it's rumors or true, maybe it's true, that the government officials are hiding or bringing their offices or whatever near hospitals or in hospitals.
Oh, I wonder where they got that idea.
Right. And again, I'm concerned about I keep on repeating this, it boils down to the normal people.
And what's going to happen
They're
to the
going to
people?
suffer too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So your daughter enters first grade and is chanting death to America, death to Israel 20 minutes a day and getting indoctrinated propaganda.
A lot of propaganda.
And you decide this is unacceptable and you're not going to...
That was the impetus for us leaving because my husband and I were very concerned about the kids' future. There would be no future for them. We knew better. I could pretend. I knew when to keep quiet. I knew how to act. I knew I had seen a different life. But when you're born into it, it's hard. And
how many Jews are left?
How many Jews?
At this point.
We don't know the exact number.
No, I mean when your daughter was in first grade at that time.
Again, exact numbers are never, you never know. But during my daughter's time, I don't know, 25,000 left, something now.
And there was 100,000 before.
Today it's estimated around 8,000.
That's still a lot. I mean, we have these maps of where Jews lived throughout the Middle East and how they were all systematically killed or exiled from all these countries in the Middle East. So to hear that 8,000 Jews still live in Iran today
and they can practice their religion. They have kosher butchery. They have schools. They can go to synagogue. They can practice their religion. But as I mentioned, they are not equal in many aspects. For example, a religious minority can never be a judge because the judicial system is based on Islamic laws. Women cannot become judges. They cannot have high positions in the government. I mentioned they have a parliament member, but that's the only thing. They cannot be army leaders. And by law, there are a lot of discriminatory laws against them. And they're more invisible and literally hold their heads down. And especially the Jews are more precarious situation because of Israel. And Khomeini, when he came to Iran, he did make a distinction between Judaism and Zionism. And since then, the Jews keep on mentioning, and their policy is that we are not Zionists, we are Jews. But unfortunately, while I was there, and I still is, the line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is blurred.
Well, I mean, my take on it is there is no differentiation between Judaism and Zionism, and that there is no differentiation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. To me, they're the same. And I actually don't even call it anti-Semitism anymore. I call it just Jew hatred is what it is.
And you cannot, as a religious minority, go out in public showing your religion. A man cannot wear a kippah, a Christian cannot wear a cross, you cannot proselytize, you cannot, God forbid, convert a Muslim to your religion. A Muslim in Iran cannot convert out of Islam. There are a lot of Iranians who've converted to Christianity and they're being persecuted. As I mentioned, Baha'is are persecuted. They have far less rights.
We saw a similar thing when the Nazis were coming to power. It was first unfair laws being passed against certain people to...
Yeah, I'm very cautious not to...
draw the comparison.
I mean, that resulted in annihilation and genocide. This is not that, because I don't think religious minorities of Jews have suffered. The whole community, the whole country, Muslims have suffered terribly. All Iranians have suffered. This is not they have pinpointed one community. Everybody has suffered.
So your daughter starts her education. It's the impetus for you deciding to leave the country. How hard was it to leave?
Very difficult. Very difficult because there was no written law, but at that time it was extremely difficult for Jews to get passports. It's easier, much easier now, but it's hard to get out because of the economy and all that. But one main reason I stayed so long, I could never get a passport. And
So you wanted to leave before, and
we tried, we couldn't. And then when I left Iran, when I fled Iran, I didn't have passport.
No.
No.
So how did you do it?
That's a long story. My book is divided into 5 parts. One is hope in the beginning, everything we were hopeful for a bright future. Then it was hope. Then we had adapt. We had to adapt to the changes. There's a veil part that is a metaphor for all the restrictions we had. The last part is resolve, and it's all the twists and turns and how we managed to leave everything. But we had a beautiful home. We had to lock the door, and at that time my kids were 6 and 2, clinging on me, and then my husband ahead of me. We took only 2 suitcases and we left.
What about your parents?
My parents stayed behind, and I did not see them for 14 years.
Wow.
But my sister, who left during the revolution, by the time my parents came to America, she hadn't seen them for 20 years.
Wow.
And this is the time that our only communication was letters.
That's so hard.
No,
I can't imagine not seeing your parents for so long.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, my only comparison is when we left the Soviet Union, it was a lot easier because at the time they were letting Jews leave to go to Israel. There was like a small window before the collapse. And I mean, I guess people will have to read the book to hear the full story of how you actually...
I don't want to be a teaser, but I cannot... You won't appreciate how I left if you don't understand all the things that led to it. So much happened. So much happened.
Well, again, I'm going to hold the book up because I really do think people need to read this and hear how Jacqueline and her family left Iran. But I want to talk about now, because we are coming up close to time. We've got people in this country marching hands off Iran. What do you feel about that? What do you have to say to those people?
I can't make predictions. I don't know how the story of Iran ends. I do know a country that produces people who are willing to risk everything for dignity is not going to last that long, this regime. I know that Iran has been the main reason of destabilization of the region. But Iran, going to war with Iran, this time is not like the 12-day war last June. This time, the regime will fight for its survival. And Iran is not a clean battlefield. It is a vast country. It does have proxies, missiles, and it will fight to the end.
Well, and yes, it does have proxies, but they've been...
A lot of them have been
drastically weakened much thanks to the work of Israel.
And their nuclear facilities during the 12-day war has been weakened as well. But Iran also has the Strait of Hormuz, which is a choke point where the oil passes every day. With all the protests we have seen inside Iran and the massacre that has happened, thousands, even President Trump admitted 32,000. I think it's much more than that, because the people who have been shot, especially in the head, they were scared to go to the hospitals. Many of the security forces came into the hospitals to shoot the injured and arrest the doctors and nurses. I don't know the percentages.
Say that again. They're going into the hospital.
That's what I heard.
To shoot injured people.
That's what I heard.
Arrest the doctors and nurses who, by all medical code, are assisting injured people.
Correct.
I'm just going to let that sit in for a minute.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes. And the people who have been protesting, they just go in the streets. They're not armed. I call it their October 7, but they are not armed. And they are they are willing to risk everything for their freedom. And going in the streets, today, people ask me if today's events are like 1979. I would say it's the same rhythm, but not the same song. Because in 1979, there was a coalition of leftist students, Marxists, Mujahideen. As I mentioned, they were all rallied and united with Khomeini. Today, what unites the Iranians is a darker thing. It's exhaustion. They want freedom. They want to afford food. They want, as I keep on mentioning, dignity. And that's why they're in the streets. And it has taken 47 years. So possibly this young generation or the third generation who will not take it anymore. They are exposed to, as I said, internet, families abroad, social media. And Iran and Afghanistan are the only two countries in the world that hijab is compulsory. I'm not against hijab. A woman can decide her own religious observance. But hijab in Iran is more than the cloth. It's limitation of rights. And in Iran, women are fighting for the freedom of how to dress and what they want. So it's very complex right now.
I'm hearing a lot of reports of a lot of sexual brutality to the women protesters. Mm-hmm. And then to cover up the sexual brutality, there's a lot of mutilation happening. And, obviously this is echoing a lot of what we've seen on October 7th. Are you hearing these reports as well?
Well, religiously, when a revolution happened, I did not know this. I was taught, I learned, I heard that a virgin girl will go to heaven if she dies, if they kill her. So again, I think it's true. They would rape women before execution in Iran. And unfortunately, I haven't experienced it. I don't know, but I've heard that when you get in prison, men and women are raped. Maybe not all the time, but it can happen. And sexual violence could be a form of torture.
Again, we're watching people who say they're for women's rights, they're for progressive, they're for liberal values in the streets here in America saying hands off Iran. And I'm seeing them tell Iranians that, the golden era of Iran was not their true culture, and this was forced upon them. So the Ayatollah has come back in and has righted and put Iran back in their true culture. What do you say to this kind of mental gymnastics that's being...
Well, Iran is a very, as I said, big country, over 92 million. I cannot generalize for a people. Iran has many ethnicities, many different kind of people. But in general...
to the people who are out in the streets supporting this regime versus supporting the people of Iran who claim to stand for women's rights and all these things, what do you have to say to them?
This regime. Say that again. Ask your question again.
We currently have people here in the United States out in the streets saying hands off Iran, supporting the Ayatollah, not really listening to the people out in the streets who do not want to continue living under this regime. What do you have to say to them?
They're a minority. They are a minority, and inside and outside of Iran, I believe majority of the people are against this regime. The minority in Iran that are for the regime or associated with the regime are the ones who have the bullets and the weapons. maybe 1.5 million IRGC members and Basij members. But you mentioned that they say the golden era was not the true Iran. Well, you tell me. Iran has had a monarchy, as I told you, and all this time the flag was the middle of the flag of Iran's flag has the emblem of the lion and the sun, Shir o Khorshid. That's what was the flag. After the Islamic Revolution, that was taken out, and the name Allah, meaning God, which is not a Persian name, it's an Arabic name, was put on the flag. And in all of these protests, even in Iran, they are holding the flag of the sun and the lion. And they're chanting Javid Shah, long live the king. They say, In akharin nabarde, Pahlavi bar migarde. This is the last battle. Pahlavi will return, referring to the crown prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the king. Reza Pahlavi has mentioned he's the biggest visible opposition to the Iranian regime. He has lived in exile from the age of 17. He's now 65. Reza Pahlavi has mentioned many times he does not want to come back to be a king. He wants to be a transitional figure to help Iran get into a democracy. And I hope, we don't know what will happen with Iran if the regime collapses. I hope that it will stabilize the Middle East for the betterment of all the region and the people. There is always a danger that it could not have an unfavorable outcome. I don't know. But the mere fact that the people are asking for Reza Pahlavi because it's not, they are remembering that Iran used to be a much better place. And we will see day by day. I'm glued to the news, and we'll see what will happen. We are such a strategically important point in this news. Anything can happen anytime.
Do you still have family and friends?
I have friends. I have friends in Tehran. I used to communicate with them on WhatsApp. Since the protests, two of them, I have two close friends. One of them, I sent a text on January 12th. How are you doing? Are you okay? She responded on January 23rd with one line. It is what it is. I will call you when I can. Never communicated to me. And I respect their safety. I don't call anybody. And we'll see. And there was an internet shutdown.
Yes.
They shut the internet.
I know that there was talk of Starlink coming in and trying to...
Elon Musk has offered that they don't have to pay membership. But the security forces also go and look at this. Of course, everybody can't have Starlink. It's not that easily accessible or safe. So
it's not a solution to the internet being shut off for everybody.
It is a big part. And they're very savvy Iranian youth. They have VPNs. There are a lot of media outside of Iran that broadcast the news. One big one is called Iran International, and the people send their videos to them. So I've seen horrific videos.
I can't even imagine the videos you've seen.
Yeah.
We're going to we've come to the end of our chat today. It's been such a pleasure. I want to leave with, what are your hopes for Iran, for Israel, for America, for us as human beings?
Well, can I see the book?
Yes.
I start the book. Let me see I have some Persian. The first page of the book, there's a Persian poem in Farsi writing. It's from Saadi, who is a 13th century poet of Iran. I'll just read the first two lines. He says, Bani Adam اعضای یک پیکرند که در آفرینش ز یک گوهرند. all human beings are like parts of the same body, and they are created from one essence, they're all somehow connected, and we're all the same. My hope is that people realize that behind all these government regimes, we can live better lives. I'll give you one example. I traveled to Thailand last December. And we went in Phuket, we went to a special tourist attraction place. I traveled with a small group of Iranian American tour. Everybody was Iranian, but we were Americans. And then at that island, we met a small group of Iranians who had traveled from Iran. And we all got so excited. We started talking to each other. And then another group comes by. They're another tour who are Iranian Israelis.
Oh, whoa.
And the three groups were all Iranians, but from Israelis, Iranians, and Americans. And we sat for 2 hours joking, talking. Oh, I know you. Who's your what's your last name? We went to the same school. I lived in the same neighborhood. I think that experience was the highlight of my trip.
That's amazing. Do you stay in touch with them?
Well, it was a passing thing. Some of them I hope to, yes.
Well, Jacqueline, thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank
so
you.
much for being here. I think we'll all be anxiously watching the news and thinking of your friends who are still in Tehran.
And all people who want more freedom and just a normal life. That's what we hope for.
Absolutely. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Jew and Stew, the podcast of the Chicago Jewish Alliance, where we highlight the voices of those on the front lines of Jewish advocacy and the allies who refuse to stand by silently. If Jacqueline's story resonated with you, please share this episode. These conversations matter. Her book is available on Amazon, and I think we all want to know the extended version of the story of how she left Iran. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and you could watch the full episode on YouTube by searching for Chicago Jewish Alliance. Until next time.
Follow the Chicago Jewish Alliance to stay in the loop and subscribe to this podcast so you can see what's coming next. We're going to have speakers that represent the entire spectrum of the Jewish community, from philosophical thinkers, from soldiers, people on the front lines of advocacy work on universities. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.